now living in County Kildare. She's a member of Poetry Ireland's Writer in Schools programme. For many years, she's been broadcast regularly on RTE Radio One Sunday Miscellany. And I could go through the list. Awards include the Gerard Manley Hopkins Poetry Award, Cecil Day-Lewis Award, Scottish International Poetry Award, the Golden Pen, McManus Short Story Competition, and so much more. And you're going to have a wonderful evening.
Deus Murray Gwynwysha, Wyntl Limni, agus an Timpelot, agus Kate Fatish, Ta Sulugun, Gwynwysha, Tanaf as an Ihe, Ta Skeilta, agus Quidfilia, agus piece of Clola Gwynwynot. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I can't actually see you, but I think kind of a bit of the Curse of St. Munchin has caught up with us tonight because we left my clothes behind me. And I have to come and have a stand up with. Somebody asked me would I like to appear nude, but I'm no Nell McCafferty, so don't look at the clothes, big ish the collection of Skeilta. And again, thank you so much for coming. Stories of the parish, stories of Limerick and elsewhere. My father was a carpenter. He didn't drink much, smoked a pipe and had a great line in cowboy stories, which we were treated to at bedtime most nights. He had a pair of honest grey eyes that defied those who doubted him. He believed that he single-handedly tamed the Wild West. He convinced us that he rode with Hopalong Cassidy and the Bar 20 Raiders. He was Nanook of the North, on his fur-covered sled, mushing huskies across the Arctic Circle. He was the Lone Ranger unmasked and found time to be the Cisco Kid too. My mother, seemingly, was the boss in our house. She fed us magnificently and supervised our homework. She knitted pullovers and socks and hats and gloves for us, and we were proud to wear them. So I assumed that we had all come into the world by Immaculate Conception. For according to Sister Mary Bonaventure, Jesus was planted in Mary's womb without passion. What was passion? Something only grown-ups understood, and the nun could not, or more than likely would not, explain to us. A powerful feeling, my dad told me when I asked, and I wondered. Ardna Crusha. Now, that's where electric power comes from. Was passion like that? I never experienced a powerful feeling in our house, except once. And only once did I ever see my father lose his temper. That was powerful. It happened like this. On a Friday night, one November, hailstone battered a fearsome dance on the kitchen window. It was dark and we were waiting for Dad to come in from work so that we could start dinner. It was shepherd's pie, not exactly my favourite, but on a wire tray, cooling, were freshly baked cream cakes for afters. I can still smell them. The baby was fretful. She was 4.5 months old and a cranky monkey. She screamed for attention, she got it and she thrived on it. I was struggling with my knitting in the corner by the range. The others were playing Ludo when, books, my mother ordered as the mantel clock chimed 6:30 and Dad hadn't arrived in from work. It was a rule in our house that everyone sat down to dinner together. But Ma'am, we're starving. Books. You ignored that measure of roar at your peril. We got out the school bags and spread the books on the table. Ma'am, what's lust? What? Lust, one of the 7 deadly sins. I have to learn them for Monday. Canon Lee is coming in to examine us for our first communion. Lust is one of the mysteries of the church, never mind what it is, just learn it. It soon became evident to us that there was something seriously wrong. I watched Mam move to the window several times and stand there looking out with a strained look on her face. My dad always arrived home in time for dinner, and he was just a little bit late, but there was something else on her mind. I could feel it. With an annoyed smack of her lips, she turned away from the window, told us to clear our books from the table, and she dished up the dinner. We had just finished the washing up and were stacking the dishes on the dresser when Dad came in, blue with the cold. He was breathing heavily and the cheek muscle rippled as he gritted his teeth with temper. Mother passed some snide remark about Friday night drinkers. Well, his face turned boiling red and his mouth opened to emit an almighty roar. Up until then, we thought that our mum was the boss in our house. This was the first time we ever heard her status challenged. Thing was, we were too young to understand my mother's anxiety about alcohol. Every Friday night, my uncles, my father's brothers, congregated at Clancy's pub. They were famous for their pint-drinking capacity, plus the glorious singing voices they were blessed with. In a more aware society, they would have been snapped up and scholarships flung at their feet. As a family, they were always hugely in demand, popular, jovial lads. Now lads no longer, just bachelors. They continued on their merry way while my dad had his responsibilities. My mother constantly feared his return to the drinking times, and no wonder. And where was I? Oh, yes, my father that November night, home, frozen to the bone, his almighty roar, Mum quivering and no longer the boss. She would say in the telling afterwards that he roared like a wounded lion. I thought it was more like a volcano, a smoking, boiling, burning mountain. What she and we could not have known was that he had been working on a roof most of the day at the mercy of the November elements. There was trouble on the site and a union member had threatened to picket the job. My father knew that the union wasn't strong enough and there was a glut of carpenters in the area. He would probably be fired. The worry drove him into the pub to meet his brothers and discuss his plight, just long enough to have one little warmer upper of rum and blackcurrant. Still worried, and despite their taunts, I go on home to the little woman by. He started off for home only to find that his bike was punctured. Can you imagine him battling the weather, his poor fingers numb, grasping the handlebars, and having to walk the mile and a half home in that weather? And then to be accused of actually enjoying himself? A wounded lion, a fiery volcano. Oh yes, it was an almighty roar. Startled, the baby howled above the ensuing silence. Mother picked her up from the cradle. Your dinner's in the range, she said frostily. That tone of voice further fueled my father's anger, and wham, splat, crash, he picked up his favourite mug from the table and flung it at the far wall. There was shocked silence. Even the baby held her breath. Then there was a turning, a slamming of door, and he was gone. All eyes turned on Mother. And fair play to her, she rose to the occasion. With a long exhalation of breath and a tightening of lips, she was the boss again. She gathered us around her. Don't worry, your dad just got his rag out of his pocket and lost it tonight. He'll be grand tomorrow. We were wide-eyed and awake when he staggered home singing hours later. There was a buzz of words in the kitchen, and then honest to God, we heard it, sweet talk. We sighed and slept. The following morning, Mum called us in a happy voice, and there was a bar of fries cream on the dresser. All's well that ends well, and the story should have finished here, but for my intervention on Monday morning, the First Communion class. We were discussing Jesus at home with Mary and Joseph in Nazareth. Sister, sister, my father is a carpenter too. Well now, isn't that a grand thing to be able to say? Just like Jesus, your father is a carpenter too. And now that you're on your feet, will you name the 7 deadly sins for me? No problem. Pride, covetousness, anger. Right, now give me an example of anger. No doubt she had in mind Matthew 21:12-17, when Jesus in anger overturns the tables in the temple, saying, "My house is a house of prayer. You have turned it into a den of thieves." I'm sure I knew about that, but I had something more immediate and a far better example to tell. So instead of a Bible story, she got a blow-by-blow account of my father taking his rag out of his pocket and firing his mug against the wall. My classmates were agog, mouths open in a chorus of "ohs" and "oh." They slurped up every word with a desert thirst. I was in my element, center stage, telling it like one of my dad's cowboy stories. God, I made it sound glorious. "Stop!" Sister Mary Bonaventure held up her lily white hand, and I was halted ignominiously in my stride. "Enough," she said. "Sit down this instant. Private family matters should not be discussed in class." "But sister, he was very angry." Who's next? Who's next? You, next there. Anyone. That girl in the pink jumper, the 7 deadly sins. What comes after anger? Lust, sister. Good girl, good girl. Sister, sister. What is it now, child? Didn't I tell you to sit down? Please, sister, what's lust? God, give me patience. You're not supposed to know what it means. It's a church law, that's all. Just learn it. It was a trying time for the poor nun. And the relief showed on her face when Canon Lee arrived to test our knowledge of the Penny Catechism. My mother still tell what she did. My mother told for years, told the tale of that evening when a pair of nuns called to our house. Under the pretext of asking my mother to knit something for a sale of work, the story unfolded. They were, from my exaggerated account, convinced that my mother was a battered wife. They had come, imagine it, these 2 holy virgins to take up her cause with my father. Somehow she had managed to assuage their fears and got rid of them before my now mellowed father came home from work. We had our dinner before he and mother had a private consultation in the parlour. Later, there was a family conference around the kitchen table, and we were briefed properly, the law according to the boss and my dad, on the whole incident. Mum wagged her finger at me and said that in future I was only to quote from the Bible to illustrate questions in my first communion class. I never ever saw my father lose his rag again. Thank you. Now I have 2 very talented people with me tonight. I have 3 actually. The musician will be coming along in a while. These 2 people, one lives in Kilcullen and the other lives in Naas, but she had the great sense to marry a man from Innis. And she's a highly talented lady, and she reads my material far better than I can. And I'm going to introduce you to John and to Sarah, who are wonderful, and I hope you'll appreciate them. Thank you.
Thomond Bridge is closed. Miles away from Limerick, I hear traffic on the Ennis Road is backed up to Caherdavin. At the eastern end, Corbally is busy too. And I follow every line on the road towards the ancient city walls. elbows on my kitchen table, I cross O'Dwyer Bridge down into Acklunkard Street, loving the damp smell of the Abbey River. Was that a kingfisher snagging from the Sally Grove? And see that stream of Elver, inches wide, wrinkling homewards along the riverbank, all the way in from the Saragossa Sea. On the radio this morning, Roadwatch reports to the world and its mother that Thomond Bridge is closed. A goose walks over my grave. The new ring road is on the march, and the little homes along the Sandmall, Sheep Street and the Abbey must bow to the power of progress.
Changeable. I see through my kitchen window this humdrum Monday, dark clouds threatening from the east. I have the hearth swept, cold ashes in the bin, beds made, dishes abandoned in the sink. A sudden squall shivers the window pane, prompting me to bring in the washing. I rush towards the door just as the postman shoves a hurricane through my letterbox.
Neither here nor there, Placido and I, doing 90 somewhere between Limerick and Naas. A single magpie flashes at Rossgrave. Bah, what does he know of our little affair? Home to our mountains, swing me back to the several years to the school operetta. Eyes fixed on the road, I conduct the air above the steering wheel, loving the power of Granada. After Monasterella, a juggernaut challenge. Should I? Placido said, no.
Placido says
So
no,
I
no.
took us in behind us,
So I took us in behind it.
duetting O Paradis.
Duetting O Paradis.
Dine is my dances
Time
her,
dances her.
takes us to the Newbridge bypass,
The Newbridge bypass,
where I turn off.
where I turn off
For
for Nace.
We are now going to take a suspiog. We're just going to take a little break and give you time for a cup of coffee, cup of tea, and little ski if I cook the note. Ben in the rash again, Tomlin. Ladies and gentlemen, I must apologise. I believe that some people up at the back can't quite hear me. Are you getting it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I speak a little bit louder and kind of project up a little bit. Okay. Shout at me if you can't hear me, okay?
What you say?
Who said that? The music you just heard, maybe you weren't quite paying attention, that was Billy Brown singing Cinderella. I'm being Cinderella tonight. Tomorrow I'll be cooking dinner and cleaning the cinders. But tonight I'm being Cinderella. And I believe that song was actually written for, or maybe in appreciation of Suzanne Murphy. And it's a wonderful thing that there's so much sort of literary and musical sort of talent recognised in Limerick. And I'm delighted to be here tonight with my little talent, but you're seeing a showcase of my work. And this is over a number of years, and it's wonderful that I get letters from all over the world through Sunday Miscellany, and I'm in touch with a number of people. I always reply when people take the trouble to write to me or leave messages there for me. And it's not that I'm on very often, but my stuff has a kind of a little, yeah, it's popular. Anyway, having said all that, I shouldn't be telling you this. I met Billy Brown today. Remember him with Derek Dean and the Freshmen? And he said to me, he did, yes, he halted in Nace and he put his arm around my shoulders and he said, I heard you on the radio, I did. And I was suddenly afraid that I would giggle like the skittish schoolgirl I was when I'd Google-eyed at him in Jetland, in his fringed suede jacket, his golden curls beating time on his shoulders as he pounded a piano. And I swung away from Butchmore and the Capitol, I did. I never liked Brendan Boyer, and Dickie Rock was for dubs. 30 years on, and both of us a little worse for wear, yet the old spark was there as I walked down the aisle in the supermarket today, but I gave my wedding dress away.
Walking with Granda. Ivy, shining satin in the sunshine, spills like a green waterfall down the old walls at Schoolhouse Lane. He pauses and picks the most perfect leaf, barely breathing a name, Parnell, the uncrowned king of Ireland. My Granda eases the short stem into the buttonhole of his Sunday suit lapel and pats it into place. We continue our stroll along Hearthstone Street towards the People's Park, and all the time he wears that leaf with a proud smile on his face. But ne'er a word of Kitty O'Shea.
Ne'er a one for breakfast, I steal away, with great difficulty controlling the goodbye pangs until I break through the Driecht barrier, winding down Bunbeg Hill. Coming into Almascall, I witness the village stirring itself to a hoar of ice-blue frost that leads right up to the door of the South Pole Inn. My resolve weakens again at camp, and tears threaten on the incline all the way to the top, where I would stop to drink in Galway Tralee Bay. But the urge of turning back to Dingle is so huge, I don't dally. On the flat again, I think of last night's Curranceole. I can also allow myself to release a tear to soothe away the awful goodbye ache. I can allow, but I cannot forget my great romance with the sea and other things, including the warm welcome on such a cold night, but that nostalgia provokes a stream of missing you already feelings. So I pick up this man with his thumb upturned, a risky but welcome distraction. A magpie chattering non-stop nonsense, his every second word an impressive, expressive expletive in a glorious Kerry brogue. He's going to Tralee for a jar, trusting his thumb for his going and his homecoming. He is my diversion. He breaks the Dangany Húisce spell, and I crack a rueful smile now beyond its magic net. Yet a voice in my head keeps calling to me. Phil a rá I gceann Tamalín.
When people speak of my grandmother Clancy, they use words like odd or eccentric. And I know only too well that she was capable of the occasional spot of hysteria. A filigree of blood on my grazed knee had her mouthing magnificent oaths, diving for the sanctuary of her bedroom and bolting the door on the outside world. On Sunday mornings, her 5 sons, one of whom was my father, brought their children to visit her. We called her Mama Clancy. Our mothers remained at home to cook the dinner and enjoy a bit of peace and quiet. Somehow, I got the impression that there was no love lost between Mama Clancy and her daughters-in-law. Her sons were hers, and no other woman entered the equation. Every Sunday it was the same thing. The brothers went across to Atlunkert Boat Club, or perhaps to Cowley's pub next door for a pre-dinner pint. And Mama Clancy gathered us around her while she put on the bacon to boil with and chopped cabbage for the cooking. Then she would dip a crust of bread in the boiling cabbage water, giving each one of us a piece, saying, "Eat that up, it's good for what ails you." And most of the time she whistled tunelessly, occasionally stopping to warn us that a whistling woman and a crowing hen draws the devil from his den. To this day, when I hear a cock crowing, I have a vision of Mama Clancy whistling and fighting off the devil in her kitchen. One Sunday, a vital buckle fell off my shoe, just as all the first cousins together were about to go swinging on the bars of the Island Bank gate. I sat and howled so loudly that Mama Clancy got out her tin sewing box, chose a needle and thread, and threaded it with much squinting of eyes. She muttered all the time under her breath, "Unnecessary servile work on Sundays," adding that she'd have to come back from her grave to rip out those stitches with her nose. I didn't care. I just wanted my shoe back so that I could go out and play. I loved Mama Clancy, and sometimes I called to see her on my way home from school, and I had her all to myself then. The big American wall clock clanked its loud tick-tock, and she and I counted the chimes when it struck on the hour and the half hour. We drank proper tea-leaf tea, strained into paper-thin lustre cups that her grandfather brought home from the China Seas. She taught me how to play Stephen Foster songs on the piano in the parlour, and she allowed me to water her precious pot plants. And there was that Saturday when she and I slipped into the snug at Quilligan's in the Irish town. She ordered a half pint for each of us. "Drink up," she said, "it'll kill the worms." And she drank enough to kill a bucket full of worms, while I tried to force down the single glass of the vile-tasting black stuff. "And don't let your mother smell your breath when you get home," she warned, "or we'll all be killed." Once, and only once, did I ever stay overnight in Mama Clancy's house. We sat around the open fire making toast on the long wire fork, while my uncles told tall tales of the Wild West until the American wall clock struck 11. Suddenly there was a noise outside. What was that? My Uncle Steph stood up. "Ma'am, don't panic now. Don't panic, you'll upset the child," he said. She clasped me tightly to her and we both shivered. We went out into the darkness of the backyard and came back seconds later. "Shh," he warned, and led a bunch of sheepish-looking, red-faced men, big men in raincoats who kept saying, "Sorry, ma'am," and they smelled like Quilligan's snug. There was a whispered conversation about a raid and the new sergeant, and of how they had vaulted the wall between the pub and Mama Clancy's backyard. Soon they were settled in and having tea, but I could feel Mama Clancy's resentment in her silence. She didn't like her privacy invaded. and by people that she mightn't even salute on good days. After a while, my Uncle Theo checked the street and confirmed that the coast was clear and they could go home. I felt Mama Clancy relax and breathe a sigh of relief. And then I just simply had to say it. And don't let your mother smell your breath and get us all killed.
Discombobulated. It came from inside his head. Woke up he did, he said, with it rolling off his tongue. Didn't know where he heard it, but he vomited it on the breakfast table. This word of 6 syllables, discombobulated. Someone, somewhere, enunciated it in his presence and left it hanging in mid-air to slide into the bites and the ram of his open memory, and it was saved there for eternity. Discombobulated. You might say it disconcerted us, as we could not find it in our pocket dictionary. We had to consult the big Oxford in the Uptown Library. Eureka! There it was, between discolour and discomfit, discombobulated.
The magic of vermilion. The man in the shop coat behind the counter sighed and clucked when I asked for a pot of red paint. Do you want crimson, strawberry, scarlet, ruby, maroon, wine, or vermilion? It was the way he said vermilion that had me nodding. Yes, please, I'll have the vermilion. Oh, so you know all about vermilion, do you? I shook my head foggily, and he drew in a huge gulp of air, and I got this sudden feeling that there was going to be a major statement on the vagaries of vermilion paint. I only want to paint the skirting boards in the bedroom, I said timidly. He held up his hand to silence me. He had something to say, and he would say it. Vermilion, he enunciated, is one of the oldest reds in the ward. Do you know it's called after the insects? I shook my head again and wondered if I should just nod in order to get out of the shop, but I felt like one of the three that the ancient mariners stopped and rooted to the spot. The Romans knew all about vermilion pigment, made it out of ants, they did. Vermes, that's what they were called. The ants, I mean. And the Romans crushed them to make a beautiful orangey red colour. That's why it's called vermilion, after the ants. Is that the colour you want, Mrs. Vermilion? I paused to think for a couple of seconds. Was orangey red the colour I wanted? There was a shuffling of feet and a clearing of throat from members of the queue forming behind me. I was a bit unsure about the orange, but the uneasy noises behind me made me nod and say a hasty yes. Maybe I could get out of the shop now, but he was away on a hack. There was no stopping him. Now, there's another type of vermilion that's made from rocks with mercuric sulfide in them. That's poisonous because there's mercury in it, you know what I mean? Artists use that sometimes, and some of the old ones even died from sniffing it. There were louder, impatient noises behind me. It changes colour, you know, missus. It's magic. Just like a chameleon. Chameleon, I repeated, puzzled. And I had a sudden image in my head of Boy George singing, "Come, come, 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 chameleon, you come and go." You know, vermilion changes from ardent to a deep red sometimes. At this stage, I was totally exasperated. Chameleon, vermilion, magic, mercury, poisonous. My head was spinning with crazy words. Well, Perhaps I should have a different shade of red then. What colour, missus? Crimson, scarlet, strawberry, maroon, pillow box. He reeled off. And you know what? Right there and then, my mind went blank. So I said, oh, just give me the non-poisonous or the least poisonous vermilion, please. I heard a sigh of relief from the queue behind when a right-o, he nodded, got a ladder and climbed to the top shelf. He whistled a fanfare as he descended and plonked the can of paint on the counter. The Chinese and the Egyptians used vermilions on their fancy documents, and sure didn't the monks of Ireland paint pictures in the Book of Kells with it, and even the Red Indians used it on the totem poles. Did you know that? I didn't care at this stage who painted with the blessed colour, but time nor tide waits for no man or woman, and I had some painting to do. I paid and ran before the people behind me became even more stroppy. Back home, I got down on my knees to paint the skirting boards. Yes, the man was right. That's what vermilion is. Magic.
close to Christmas, and you know, it's breaking my heart that I had this two gorgeous outfits to wear, and I end up in my duds. But I hope it didn't detract from the stories. And but every time I lean forward, I fall off these. I should have done a Sandy show, shouldn't I? And taken off the shoes altogether. Anyway, just to stay with the spirit, and you can see that my love of Limerick keeps coming out. A lot of the time, I don't know where the stories come from, but. I had such a wonderful childhood here in the city, and thank God for it, and thank God for very good parents and family, and hopefully my grandchildren will read my stories and remember me for it. So I remember one particular time when it was coming up to Christmas, and we are going to read this for you. It is a caroling we would go.
Snow fell that Christmas week, just a dusting, but it was snow nonetheless. It remained on the ground and frosted over to crunch underfoot. Couldn't be better. Christmas week, and the setting was perfect for caroling. A bunch of us got together and decided to do our bit for charity.
We rehearsed the few carols we knew until we felt sufficiently polished for a reasonable performance. In the interest of authenticity, we borrowed some obsolete oil lanterns from Limerick Corporation's road department and tied them to broom handles. Everyone wore red fluffy hats, scarves and mittens that we bought in Roach's stores. And yes, I think you could say that we were well prepared for the task at hand.
On the appointed evening, we gathered on Sarsfield Bridge and tried to work out a plan of action for our first public performance. Collectors had been appointed by our chosen charity, so we had nothing to do but sing. But where to begin? Everyone was a bit shy starting off under the bright city lights, so we turned our backs on the city and chose a secluded cul-de-sac off the Ennis Road, with a central elevated grass circle that was an ideal platform for us. Oh, but it was so cold. When we stood on the frosted grass, it sent up a mist of icy particles that rose up to freeze our knees.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. Our self-appointed conductor counted, and we tried to join in together, but somehow angels we have heard on high didn't sound quite right. And when it came to the chorus, oh, it was all over the place and totally out of sync. This would never do. We had to get it right. And so we did. After 2 more false starts, we were delighted with ourselves. We were the carolers of Limerick, upholding the ancient Christian tradition at Christmas. But oh, it was so cold you could hear the shivers in our voice.
The collectors were knocking on front doors and lights went on to cast a yellow glow on the snow. A sliver of moon and twinkling stars in the cloudless night sky provided a perfect backdrop. And what happened then? Our lanterns began to puff out vile-smelling black smoke that had us coughing and nearly choking. They had to be quenched, but mindful that they had to be returned to Limerick Corporation next day, we had to carry them around with us for the rest of the evening. My fingers numbed inside my mittens.
Silent night was, in a word, painful. We were so cold we could hardly mouth the words. The first Noel was the final carol in our repertoire. We finished on an almighty roar and every dog in the neighbourhood began to howl. What could we sing now? One of the collectors ran over to us. Keep singing, he begged. Sing something, anything for God's sake. We're knocking on doors and please, please sing loud enough so that people can hear ye. One guy in our group said, I'll sing my party song, Jerusalem, and you can join in. But that's not a carol, we protested. It has angels singing in it, he insisted. And before we knew what was happening, Jerusalem, Jerusalem was being belted out at a raucous rate, and sure, we had to join in. Oh yes, we were mighty.
Do you know that little pause after a terrific performance, when you hold your breath for a couple of seconds, waiting for the applause? Well, we were just into that little pause when a man bounded down the steps of a house and vaulted over the garden wall. Someone said, "Oh look, a Lord a-leaping." Picked up immediately. 8 pigs and milking 7 swans and swimming 6 geese a lane. The Lord a-leaping came straight towards us and began to shout hysterically, "Get out! Get out of here, you bunch of crows! My wife's gone out and I just got that cranky baby to sleep."
We stood there, mouths wide open in astonishment.
"If you don't go away this minute, I'll call the guards and have the lot of you locked up for disturbing the peace. Get out now!"
He flung at us over his shoulder as he bounded, Basil Fawlty-like, up the steps, back into his house, and snapped the door shut.
What was that he called us? A bunch of crows. Well, we were stunned into silence, totally demoralised, and decided it was time to call it a night. The Lord a-leaping had called the tune.
Our lamps were well and truly quenched.
So we headed for the nearest hostelry, lamps and all,
For something hot and spicy to bolster up our courage
For our next performance.
Sorry, I can't even walk in these shoes. I'm stunned. Yeah. I just want to finish up with something. It was an absolute surprise that I won a playwriting competition at the Kilkenny something or other, and this was my immediate reaction: euphoria. When I come down from the ceiling, I'll be fine, I think, but things will never be the same again. Perhaps they will or won't. Who's to say? It's today I'm on the ceiling. That's the way I'm feeling. For so long, I was so low, reaching for long ladders, but those adders had me slithering farther down into an abyss. But not today. No way, Jose. Right now, I'm on the ceiling. That's the way I'm feeling. Please don't ask me to come off it. I would ask you to put your hands together for these two magnificent people. It's a showcase of my writing, but also of their talent. And our lovely musician, where are you? Where are you? Who came from Ennistimon to be here tonight. And there's one other person that we have to mention. At times he nearly killed me, but he kind of put this show together, got it in order, and as I say, nearly killed me in the process, but I'm alive tonight and delighted to be in Limerick. His name is Neil Donnelly, and he did all this work. Míle maith go léir, and do take care if you're driving, and keep warm, and I hope I can come back again another time with a new show. Míle maith.